For years, Renee had wanted to show me around her home state of Michigan. The only time I had visited Michigan in the past was to see a Static X concert at the State Theater in Detroit. Finally, I agreed we'd do a little Michigan tour and see what it had to offer. First, we went to her hometown, Royal Oak, and saw the house where she grew up. We also saw her old high school. She said it had changed quite a bit. We also got some fresh apple cider and donuts. Oh my God, that was delicious. We went to the German-themed town of Frankenmuth, or Frankenmuth, as she says it. While we were there, we went to Bronner's Christmas Wonderland and got a Michigan-themed Christmas ornament. They've got every kind of Christmas decoration you could imagine, and then some. After that, we went up to the Upper Peninsula to check out Mackinac Island and the Grand Hotel. It was fire. I didn't know Michigan had so much to offer. It was close to Halloween, so while we were there, we decided to do a little ghost hunt. We usually do one on every trip. I did an impromptu investigation of Fort Mackinac while we were in the UP. It's said to be haunted. I didn't really get any evidence other than the creepy feeling that I was being watched. I did hear some strange noises while walking around in the buildings, but not anything to get too excited about. They had mannequins dressed in period clothing in each building, which scared the shit out of me a few times. Renee is Facebook friends with several paranormal investigation groups in Michigan, so she asked them where we should go. The overwhelming consensus was that we should go to Eloise Asylum. Eloise Asylum, also known as Eloise Psychiatric Hospital, is in Westland, Michigan, outside of Detroit. It operated from 1839 to 1982. It started out as a poorhouse, then developed into an asylum, sanitarium, and hospital. Eloise consisted of 78 buildings on 902 acres with 10,000 patients, along with 2,000 staff. It was the largest psychiatric facility in the United States. Only 5 of the 78 buildings and the Eloise Cemetery remain today. The complex was completely self-sufficient. It had its own police and fire departments, along with a railroad and trolley system. It included a bakery, amusement hall, laundry facility, post office, and a power plant. It had its own farm, which included a dairy herd, dairy barns, piggery, root cellar, tobacco curing building, and greenhouses. So it was like its own standalone city, pretty much. Patients came from Detroit and other communities to have x-rays done. It also housed the first kidney dialysis unit in the state of Michigan and pioneered the use of music therapy. Staff also used hydrotherapy, shock therapy, and insulin therapy to treat patients. Yikes! As the years went on, the institution grew larger and larger, mirroring the increases in the population of the Detroit area. It went from only 35 residents in 1839 and grew to about 10,000 residents at its peak during the Great Depression. Slowly, over the next 40 years, Eloise's population decreased. I wonder why. The farm operations ceased in 1958, and some of the large psychiatric buildings were vacated in 1973. The psychiatric division started closing in 1977, with the last patients being transferred out in 1982, when the state of Michigan took over. The General Hospital closed its doors in 1986. Today, there is only one building currently in use, the K. Beard Building. Back in the day, it was used for psychiatric admissions. It housed 400 patients and had living quarters for some employees. The site is marked by a Michigan historic marker. The site and the adjoining Eloise Cemetery are believed to be haunted, and that's putting it mildly. Haunted tours of the K. Beard Building are offered periodically throughout the year. One of the groups Renee is friends with does group paranormal investigations there. We enthusiastically registered to attend and put the plan into motion. We arrived at Eloise in the late afternoon. It was pretty cold. Well, compared to Florida. So we were bundled up. We first walked around the outside of the building to get a feel for its size. It was very big and creepy looking. It's a tall, foreboding building. We looked at the windows to see if we could see anything or anyone in them. We didn't. After a little search, because it wasn't marked, we found where we were supposed to enter and walked in. We went to the table that was set up just inside the entrance with two of the ghost investigators behind it. We introduced ourselves, got checked in, and signed the waivers. The building had that old, musty building smell. It was colder in the building than it was outside. I could see my breath inside the building. Outside, I couldn't. We waited in another room for everybody else to arrive. To say we were chomping at the bit was an understatement. About 15 minutes later, the host came over and divided everyone into two groups. One group went to one side of the building, and the other group went to the other side. After a certain amount of time, we would switch sides and investigate the other end of the building. The instructions given to us were pretty straightforward. Be respectful and do not provoke. Since there are several people here at the same time, try to keep noise and chatter to a minimum. I had my Ghost Finder EMF in one hand and my phone in the other. Renee had a digital recorder in one hand and her phone in the other. Surprisingly, we had brought the most equipment out of everybody in both groups. The host did have some equipment for others to use during the investigation. Renee and I kind of wandered away from our main group, trying to eliminate contamination. You know, people talking. But the echo in the old building made that nearly impossible. I would periodically say, "Shh," and pretend I heard something. That would quiet everyone down for a little bit, although most everyone did keep their voice down. Thank God. We walked through a few admin rooms and saw some old charts of patients still scattered around on the floor and desks. We were snapping pictures almost constantly. While in one of the administration rooms, I heard someone behind me whisper, "Hey." I turned around to see if they were talking to me. When I did, no one was there. I clearly heard something. It even echoed a little off the walls. A chill ran down my arms. I asked Renee if she heard it. She said no. I don't know how she didn't hear it. We continued on out of the room and down the hall. Shadow figures seem to love to peek around corners and doorways for some reason. So I took several pictures while facing the hallways. I didn't catch anything at first. I started to review them as I went, but that was taking too long. So I just snapped the pictures and looked at them later. One picture I got shows a head through the window of a door down the hall. No one was down there at the time. I think it was the white lady that the host told us about during the introduction. So that was pretty cool. A picture that Renee took seemed to catch what could be a shadow figure. It didn't look like a person though. It looked like a kind of black blob on the wall. But there was no black blob on the wall when she took the picture. We continued taking pictures of wheelchairs, tables, carts, books, and about any random thing in each room. In one of the rooms, Renee said, "Ow!" She whipped around and looked behind her. I asked her what happened. She said, "I thought I backed into something sharp, but there's nothing there." She was standing in the middle of an empty room. I think a ghost pinched her ass. We moved on to one of the patient rooms. It looked like it must have housed several patients. There were cubicles on each side of the room. As I slowly entered the room, I heard what sounded like someone laughing maniacally. It wasn't real loud, but loud enough that we both heard it. I figured it was probably someone in the group laughing out loud. But after we entered the room and looked around, we saw that we were the only ones in there. I whispered to Renee, "That was a disembodied laugh." With big eyes, she nodded. We continued scouting out the room. As we were leaving the room, Renee said, "Bye." Seconds later, we both heard a small child giggle come from inside the room. There were no children on the ghost hunt. It was adults only. We left the room and entered the hallway. As we were slowly walking down the hallway, we heard what sounded like something hit a metal gate. It made a loud bang. Startled, we both jumped. We hurriedly continued down the hall in the direction of the noise. At the end of the hall, we took a left, and right there was one of those old elevators with the retractable metal gate in front of it. I gently rattled it. We looked at each other and nodded in amazement. That was what we heard. We continued down the hall and saw most of the group inside a huge room. Intrigued as to what was going on, we joined them. It looked like a cafeteria. We went in and looked around. So far, my ghost meter hadn't signaled yet. Then, out of nowhere, it beeped. It was just one or two quick beeps, but it sure as hell got my attention. Renee took a picture from behind me and caught a few orbs floating in front of me, right after the ghost finder beeped. Normally, on their own, I don't give much credence to orbs. They could be dust particles or water vapor. But when they're coupled with some other form of evidence, like an EMF going off, well, that changes things. The hunt was almost over, and we decided to split from the group one more time. As we were walking down the hall, we passed a stairwell. As we were passing it, we heard a faint howl come from deep down in the stairway. It wasn't super loud, but it was loud enough that we both heard it. The stairway was taped off, so we couldn't enter it. We looked up and down the stairwell from the doorway. We took a few pictures and stood there for a minute. I asked, "Who's down there?" Nothing. Renee asked, "What's your name?" After about 5 to 10 seconds, we heard a deep but weak moan. I looked at Renee and said, "His name is..." We headed back toward the group. As we were nearing the gathering, a member of our group in front of us backed out of one of the rooms, shaking her head and motioning wildly with her hands, saying, "Nope, nope, nope, I'm done." Everyone at the same time asked, "What happened?" She said, "I saw a silhouette in the back of that room. As I started backing up, it just sort of faded into the wall behind it. I've seen enough. I'm done." And she and her partner left the building hastily. Well, the investigation was almost over anyway. This wasn't our first rodeo when it comes to ghost investigations. Hell, we've already been to several at this point. But Eloise Asylum did not disappoint. It's definitely in our top 5. If you visit Detroit and you're into paranormal stuff, I would highly recommend a paranormal investigation at this terribly active asylum. That is, if you think you have the spirit for it.